Lying in the middle of a plain in modern-day Iran is a forgotten ancient city, Persepolis. Built 2,500 years ago, it was known in its day as the richest city under the sun. Persepolis was the capital of the largest empire the world had ever seen. But for over 2,000 years after its destruction, it was largely ignored. The life and achievements of the Persians who built it, erased from history.
The Persians are still an enigma to us. We don't know them as well as we like to think we know the Greeks, or the Romans, or the Egyptians. So in a sense, they are one of the remaining mysteries of ancient civilization.
It is one of the most undervalued periods of history in antiquity that you can think of.
But no longer. Through the archaeology, the ancient texts, and work by a new generation of historians, we can build a picture of this remarkable civilization. And it is this place, Persepolis, which holds the key to this forgotten empire. The ancient Persians were the greatest power on earth. Their style and fashions were widely copied.
Persians take on the aesthetic side of life, on the finer points of living. Everything from how you plant your garden and how you walk in your garden, and to how you decorate your walls, clearly had an impact on later world civilizations, certainly through Greece and into Rome, possibly into contemporary Western society as well.
The Persian approach to architecture, gardens and textiles has survived to this day. But there were those in the ancient world who despised everything the Persians stood for. This hostility would one day lead to the destruction of the Persian Empire and of Persepolis itself. One custom that both fascinated and appalled the Greeks was the Persian feast.
Most of what we know about Persian feasts, of course, comes from the Greek sources, because the Greeks are so interested or fascinated by this concept of luxury that obviously feasting is going to be an element of that luxurious lifestyle. Persian feasts are going to be opulent, all the kind of things which are always associated with luxury.
Drinking was an essential part of the Persian feast. Herodotus wrote, "The Persians are very fond of wine, and no one is allowed to vomit or urinate in the presence of another person."
The Persians seem to live by this principle of telling the truth. That's something that actually the Greeks begrudgingly admire in them. And they use drinking as a rather political system. The Persians tend to get very drunk because only in drink do you tell the truth. So, you have your political discretion, you drink a lot, things get said, then everybody goes to bed and mulls it over, wakes up the next day with a hangover, and then everybody comes back together again to have the same conversation to see if they still have those kind of ideas.
Like many Persian traditions, feasting was not luxury for luxury's sake. It had an important social role.
Feasting brings you together as a community. They are all partaking of the same food and of the same experience, so it's a great uniting thing.
Yet to the Greeks, it was another example of why the Persians were an inferior race. Alexander the Great warned his own soldiers that gluttony and opulence lead to much unmanliness. Those that eat such enormous meals are far too quickly beaten in battles.
What the Greek sources like to play up is this idea that the Persians are luxurious, effeminized, luxury-loving, effeminizing race of no-gooders, really, who are over there somewhere in the east, and they are corrupting us and our morals and all that we stand for.
And it was Alexander the Great who was determined to end the corrupting influence of the Persians once and for all. In 334 BC, he began a campaign to take over the empire that had ruled the known world for the previous 250 years. At the first pitched battle between the two armies, at Issus in Turkey, Alexander's Macedonian army scored a resounding victory over the forces of King Darius III of Persia, despite being greatly outnumbered.
A lot probably has to do with different military tactics that the Macedonian army used against the Persians. The Persians were used to fighting in a plain. They were using chariots, which were not used in the Macedonian army. But it was also the Macedonian idea of immediate surprise attack that helped.
Over the next 2 years, Alexander's superior military tactics allowed him to take over lands that were once under Persian control. In 331 BC, he reached Persia itself. By the time he arrived in Persepolis, the Persian armies had been routed. The 12th and last Persian king, Darius III, was dead. Alexander entered the undefended city unopposed. The ceremonial center that for nearly 2 centuries had embodied Persian dominance of the world was finally in Greek hands. Alexander told his soldiers they were now in the most hateful of cities.
You've got to remember where Alexander actually comes from, Macedonia, okay? These are thugs, mountain thugs. This is what Alexander's stock is all about. And suddenly he comes to this place, which after all, the Persians have been accused for centuries of being effete luxury lovers. Now this stuff is anathema to Alexander's Macedonian and Greek followers.
Alexander, triumphant, held a banquet for some of his troops at Persepolis. According to the Greek accounts, it was here that the city's fate was sealed. Alexander fully understood the symbolic importance of Persepolis as the very heart of the Persian Empire. It had to be destroyed.
Alexander will destroy everything that could be a potential source of resistance and opposition to him. Persepolis was that. He wanted to make a point of destroying Persian power.
And so Alexander's soldiers began burning and looting.
The city itself is described by ancient authors as being unprotected. There was no military guard here to defend the population. Some people say that what he did was to pile up flammable material, furniture, curtains, and from there the fire started and then of course spread through the whole terrace. It just burned.
I dare say this night there must have been chaos here. So the carnage, the chaos must have been horrific.
Alexander's soldiers just ransacked the city. They looted everything that was there. They burned the houses. I think Alexander is the first recorded hooligan in history. he used brutal force, violence, needlessly, destroying a site that had no military function, that was indeed unprotected when he came here. It was totally needless to burn it down, to destroy and kill the population of Persepolis.
The Greeks, who claimed to be the founders of civilization, who called the Persians barbarians, had committed a gross act of vandalism. They had destroyed the greatest city on earth.
It's a sad death of this remarkable imperial city, this seat of culture and this seat of ceremony.
At the time, it was the most magnificent city in the non-ancient world, and that Alexander had destroyed. And with that, an era came to an end.
But by burning down the city, Alexander ironically helped preserve it. Much of it remained buried under the ashes produced by the fire, protected from the elements for the next 2,000 years. It was not until the excavations of the 1930s that many of the reliefs and clay tablets that tell us so much about Persian life could be studied for the first time. And although the city had been destroyed, the legacy of the Persians survived. Their formal gardens, their ceremonial architecture, and their sense of luxury were copied by other civilizations, even the Greeks. But their greatest achievement of all was the empire itself. The first global empire in history was built on a model of tolerance and respect for other cultures that few great powers have ever matched. Perhaps now, at last, the Persians will take their rightful place as one of the great civilizations of antiquity.